Hello, everyone. Oh, look, Kay and I here, and it's on the wire time. Welcome to you. Welcome to people who are watching this recording because they are either having a very quiet Saturday night or they are very interested in doing well in the financial management standards. So I shall assume that the latter is the truth there, all right? And I'm Marie Davidson. This is my lovely colleague, Kay Moorhan, and we would love to spend this next sort of 50 minutes with you, guiding you through some good practice around the financial management standard, what's required, what we see as keys to success. And we're also going to spend a little bit of time, Kay will be able to help me if she's willing, systemising our financial management responsibilities when it comes to meeting all of the requirements of the funding body. I know that's a biggie, isn't it? If you are watching this because you can't sleep, it's probably because you're worried about meeting all of the financial requirements of the funding body. Yes. So I'm going to help you through that. All right. So just always acknowledging that we're on Aboriginal land. Happy NAIDOC week to people who are watching. And I'm on beautiful Biripi country here in Port Macquarie, mid-north coast, New South Wales. And Kay,
I'm on Gadigal land in Sydney.
Yes. And so always acknowledging the elders, the keepers of knowledge, and always acknowledging the deep connection to the land and waters here where we are and wherever you are watching us from today. Financial management standard. Let's have a little look at what is required in terms of service excellence. Now, really, that's as far as our expertise can extend, because really all we are expert on, Kay and I, are these standards, okay? So if you have any sort of questions about, what is cash versus accrual accounting and what are the ins and outs of the Australian accounting standards, you are going to need to contact your financial person on that, all right? That is not us, so don't ring us with any of those kinds of curly questions. We can only tell you what we see strengths in the financial management systems as we get around your services, and what we would be looking for as evidence. Is that right, Kay? Yes, that's right. Just a little disclaimer there. All right. So good to be on the wire again. Here we are. The financial management standard, look at that. There are 4 indicators of success here. The intent of this standard is that financial management is transparent, it's accountable, it ensures effective use of resources. And the way we use that is we're having a look at your system and we're thinking on, does it do that? So the intent of the standard is that you have systems that are set up, that are transparent, they're accountable, and that they're ensuring effective use of your resources, like, no waste, no duplication, you're keeping an eye on expenditure, all those sorts of things there, all right? So you've got a good oversight of the money story. And the outcome of this is that the organisation will be financially sustainable, all right? So you're going to be around for the long term. And that's very important. So it requires a lot of planning, doesn't it? On that, the first indicator in this standard is that the budgets reflect the business planning processes. Now, what this means is we need to see a line of sight between your strategic and business plan and your budget. Now, so what we see sometimes is there are these amazing plans and projects in the strategic plan and in the business plan that don't appear to be costed in your budget. And we're sort of thinking, well, that sounds awesome, but where's the money coming for that? So what we expect to see is that, organisations that do have, big aspirations outside of their delivery of their funded programs is that they do have reserves for that. That they do have funds for that, or they do have a plan around using a different income stream, maybe some philanthropic income streams, for example. All right, so there's just some thinking around this is our plan and this is how it is resourced. Okay, so we will definitely want to see a budget. We want to see that budget does a good job of expending the funding as per the requirements in your funding agreement. But we'll also want to see where, you're allocating any reserves or discretionary funding, or, where you've got grants and things like that that might be supporting or giving legs to the business plan or the strategic plan. At the very least, if you're a small organisation, you'll need to have an annual budget. All right, that covers all of your operational costs, such as wages and other sorts of things to keep your doors open. Kay, happy for you to come in at any time with exemplars or things that you've seen. The second one here is that all the responsibilities for the financial management have been assigned to people. Now, when it says appropriate officers, it means people who've got the capability and capacity to be able to do a good job on it. In some situations, that would be a treasurer. In some situations, that would be a treasurer with a bookkeeper. In some situations, that would be a treasurer with an accountant. In some situations, that accountant would be internal in the organisation, or it might be a contracted service. All right. So everything that happens to do with looking after the money story needs to be delegated to someone who knows how to do it. All right. This one is interesting. Systems are in place to ensure compliance with financial requirements of the funding body. Kay, are you waving to me, or are you putting your hand
I am
up?
waving. I just wanted to ask you, are we going to go into more detail about evidence in a minute? Okay, I'll hold my question.
Yeah, thank you, Kay. In a moment, we're actually going to systemise that indicator there. Systems are in place to ensure compliance with financial requirements of the funding body. I'm going to help you draw what that system could look like. All right. And as we go, we'll have a look at the types of evidence that might be required. We're going to dive into the evidence guide, everyone. So get excited for that. Okay. And the fourth indicator here is that performance against the budget is monitored on a regular basis. It's reported to management and anyone else who needs to know about how you are travelling with your finances. So sometimes your funder, sometimes your members, all right? So sometimes your partners that you might be delivering those funded programs with. All right, starting to see a bit of a pattern there. So we want to see that your money story is documented in a budget or similar. We want to see that all of the responsibilities are delegated to the people who can do that work for you. We want to see that you are looking after the government funds and what systems you have in place to do that. And we want to see you monitoring it, monitoring your financial performance on a regular basis, right, as a summary. So if we jump into the evidence guide now, what I might do for you, Kay, is I might pop it directly in the chat so you don't have to go searching for it. Everybody else, you can go searching for your evidence guide. And I think it's page 34 that we'll direct you to. There we go. Oh, sorry. I should have had that ready for you, Kay. Where have I put it now?
I've got it handy. It's fine.
Oh, thank you. I need to open it myself. So I might just open it on the screen for everybody then.
Yeah, open it on the screen.
Thank you. Here we go. It's version 9 evidence guide that we're looking at. And if you are in the same version, then it is page 34, I believe, where the financial management standard sits. And we'll just briefly go through some of the things that you might need to be showing us. I'll just share that screen with you there. There we go, everyone. All right. So as we said, the sort of evidence that we would need to see is a budget. And we will be asking you questions about how that budget was developed. All right. So that's one of the questions that we will ask you is, how do you get together to develop the budget? Who's involved in developing the budget? And what's your process for developing that? So you might be able to show us some minutes from when you got together to develop that. If you've got an annual business plan that has got the objectives in your strategic plan resourced with the various funding streams, that's really great evidence for us to see. Kay, if you've got any examples or exemplars, please come in. When we come to the second indicator here, where responsibilities are assigned, we would expect to see that in your financial management policies and procedures. We'd also expect to see some financial delegation. Okay, so all the things to do with the money story should be in your policy and procedure, but also in your policy and procedure, who does what. And who's allowed to do what, that's in the delegations, right? So the board are allowed to expend to what level, the CEO has to seek approval for items over what level or outside of budget, what can the staff spend, all those sorts of things. Is there still such a thing as petty cash, Kay? Do you see any petty cash floating around these days?
I do see petty cash floating around. Not very much, but yeah, it's there. Yeah.
Okay. So even who's looking after the cash, if you do keep cash, who's allowed to hold the Coles card? You know, those sorts of things. Is there a credit card and who's got that? All right.
Yeah, one thing I've come across a bit has been buying things on company accounts. So, you know, the office works order or the, you know, supermarket orders and that sort of stuff. Like a lot of people can, you know, online can order and put it to the organisation's account. So that's a cost incurred before approval, unless they have a delegation, right?
Excellent. Perfect. That's a great example. It wouldn't matter really where or how you were purchasing it. It would be the delegations would tell you up to what limit, and the delegations would say what sort of approval you need to get before you can do that. Yeah. Yeah. So delegations can be very handy for that because they can keep things going and flowing in terms of expenditure, which for some organisations, you know, is happening every day when you're purchasing, let's say, brokerage and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic. If you've got a procurement policy and procedure, then who's allowed to spend and how things get purchased should all be documented in there. Systems are in place to ensure compliance with the financial requirements of the funding body. More on that in a moment because we're going to have a look at a system around that. Can you see how the indicator says systems are in place? Yeah, so it's more than just having an Excel spreadsheet. It's a whole systemised approach. Every part needs to work really well together to ensure that you're meeting those requirements of the funding body. We generally see things working really well in that space. We generally see some very good systems in place for making sure that happens. Yeah. It doesn't have to be an expensive sort of a system. It can just be some reminders in Outlook, and, you know, people are committed to how it all happens, you know, when the reports are due and how the reports get done, etc. And your financial people need to know about the process for acquitting those funds. I generally see people got very good monitoring systems in place anyway, you know. That's good. We'll have a closer look at that in a minute. And the fourth one here, performance against the budget is monitored on a regular basis and reported, right? So monitoring financial performance would be one aspect of this, and reporting to stakeholders wherever you need to. Kay, you can probably think of some must-dos when it comes to financial reporting. What's one financial report that must get done? Can you think of one?
A financial report, expenses report. Is that what you mean? No?
Yeah. So is there, with regard to community-based organisations or charities, there's an annual.
Oh, sorry. Yes, the ACNC.
There she goes.
Annual financial. Yeah.
There she goes. So there's an annual statement that needs to be returned to the ACNC, for example, right? So that's something that's a must do in terms of your financial performance must be reported to that regulator. So that's an important one, all right? So, and your performance against your funding budgets would need to be acquitted and reported to your funder, for example, right? So there's monitoring performance, and then there's reporting on that performance to wherever you must do that. If you create an annual report, your annual audited financial statement needs to be provided to your members. Okay, so those sorts of things there. All right, so that is your lovely financial management standards. There are 4 indicators of success there, and there's some very good information in this evidence guide about the sorts of things that would be required. All right, I like that this is sort of, just, it's got the bare minimum, all right? So you'll probably be doing a lot more as an organisation, but the evidence guide does have the bare minimum in there for you. Just a little bit more on that. I did do a little bit of research for you just to let you know that there are financial reporting requirements under the Associations Act. If you click into these links here, which I'll do now, okay, just let me know if this comes up on your screen or whether I need to do a new share. Are you on the fair trading page with me now?
No, I'm still looking at your
I'll do a new share. We'll
screen.
see.
Yeah, your PowerPoint.
Yeah. How about now?
Yes. Now.
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you. So if you click into that link in the PowerPoint there, everyone, you're going to see the requirements for a Tier 1 association. Okay, that's an association that has a total revenue of more than $250,000 a year. Current assets are more than $500,000 a year, right? So that's a lot of organisations, I think. Okay, so it requires a few things of you here. And down here is what's probably of most interest to you, is complying with the Australian accounting standards. Now, when we assess you, we will be looking for your systems to comply with the Australian accounting standards. Okay. Now, we're not experts, we're not accountants, so we don't know this back to front, but we do know the sorts of things that would be required, such as, the reports that might need to go to the board, that you've decided on cash or accrual accounting, that you set an annual budget, that you have your statements, or that you have your finances audited annually, those sorts of things there. You have a separate income and expenditure statement, those sorts of things. And there's some rules here about your financial audit. Okay, so that's a helpful page. And the other helpful page is here for you, the sorts of records that you would need to be keeping. And I think I've possibly popped that into the next screen for you. As a minimum, here we go. Pretty straightforward. We've never really come across an organisation that has not been complying with these sorts of things here. All right, so we need to see records of receipts, records of payments, records of invoices, and bank statements, and that they are reconciled. So important that as an organisation that you're across that. There's a very good ACNC checklist that will help you to get right across all of that. I'll share that with you in a moment. So as a bare minimum, if we're going to be thinking about the performance, the financial performance of the organisation is monitored regularly, then each time you have a board meeting, if you think about the profit and loss statement, the month and the year to date, and a balance sheet. Right, there's many more financial reports, and you can do a depreciation report, and you can do an asset report. You can do all sorts of, cash in the bank reports and all sorts of things. But at a bare minimum, this is what we would expect to see. As one of your resources that I'm sharing with you is a sample financial report, one that's quite detailed, right? So you could work back from there and you could say, yep, no, we want to report this to our board, and we don't want to report that. We might report that every quarter, we might report that every 6 months. So I've got that sample there for you to have a look at. But as a minimum, this is what your key stakeholders, such as your board, should know, should be monitoring. ACNC reporting, and size does matter. So if you're a small, medium or large charity, you have different reporting requirements if you are under the ACNC. So anybody who's a charity who has that not-for-profit status there would need to present a annual statement, it's called. I've got a little table here for you to have a look at. So all charities are required to submit an annual information statement, but only the medium and large are required to submit the annual financial report. Okay. You can optionally, if you're a small, you can present an annual financial report if you like. Okay, so there's a little table that sort of shows you your financial reporting obligations. The annual information statement is generally done online. If you're a charity, you will have a portal and you will go and complete your statement in the portal. How long do you have after the end of the financial year to submit your statement? Does anyone know? Does anyone know? How long is it that you have to submit? You have 6 months after the end of your charity's reporting period, which is generally the end of the financial year, to submit your annual information statement or to present your financial report to the ACNC. We've never really come across an organisation that wasn't across that. It's not a high-risk area. Most people are able to comply with that. The resources that I'm giving you today, I've got that sample, monthly financial report for an association. So that's something you'll find in your resources. And I'm giving you the ACNC checklist. I might take you and show you that now in case you're not familiar with using that. It's a very good governance compliance checklist for the ACNC. So any of you who are charities, which most of our clients are, do have that charitable status, don't they, Gay? Yeah, I'm just going to open up that checklist. It's called the ACNC Healthy Corporations Checklist, and it has a financial and contract management section in it. So don't be alarmed by the numbers. It's better to have a checklist with everything on it than to have things missed, all right? So yes, you are up to like 100 on the checklist here, but don't worry, don't worry. So this is the section that I'm drawing your attention to in this checklist here. Actually starts here under financial management administration. Okay, and so the sorts of things that you want to be sure about are your corporation's written financial reports. Hello. Thank you, darling. Your written financial records correctly describe and reflect the transactions, the financial position and performance. We already talked about that. And they would enable the preparation and auditing of true and fair financial reports, okay? That's just talking about the sort of, the state that your records are in. Your bank accounts reconciled. You could tick that one. Do your financial records relate to transactions made in the last 7 years? All right, so for all transactions carried out in the last 7 years must be retained. So this is telling you as a charity, you must retain your financial records for 7 years. How are you maintaining your payroll records? Does your corporation have an assets register? Do the accounting practices of the corporation comply with the Australian accounting standards? Are your procedures and controls of overpayment of expenses, advances and wages adequate, right? So what about your financial risk management? What about the controls that you have? There's a very good list of things there that could be helpful. When making payments, are you following the correct procedures? And there's an example of the sorts of procedures that you could use to check yourself. Are you meeting all your taxation obligations? Are you keeping up to date with paying council and water rates? All right. So any other sorts of bills as well, not just council and water rates, but any sorts of, important operational expenses or, supplier accounts and things like that. So there's a good little checklist for the sorts of things that you might want to make sure. This is a checklist that I encourage organisations to do annually as they prepare their risk plan. So as you review and update your risk plan, this is a really good governance compliance checklist to run yourself through as a board. All right. How are you feeling so far? It's all right? Not too overwhelming? Good. Well, let's have some fun now. That indicator 3.1.3, it says, are systems in place to ensure compliance with the financial requirements of the funding body? Now, if you're an organisation like many we work with that have a range of sources of funding and a range of programs, or, you know, different sorts of funding streams that you have to report on, then you want to have a really good system in place, not just a person with a bit of a spreadsheet. So as we have done before on the wire, let's wheel out our trusty system. And what I will do is just remind you that there are 5 elements to a well-functioning system. And this system that we're looking at today is a system to ensure compliance with the funder requirements, the financial requirements, the set by the funder, okay? And so, Kay, if you want to play, you can find your annotate. You can start to write some things on the screen whatever you would like, but also you can talk to me.
I just can't remember how to use annotate now.
Well, I'll tell you where annotate is. It is,
where is it?
push your cursor up to the top of the screen where it says you're viewing Marie's screen. Next to that,
view options.
View options. You got
there
it.
There we go. Yeah. Good.
Okay. So look, I put over here in the left-hand corner that systems are diced, D-I-C-E-D. It's a nice little trigger. It's a little acronym to help you to remember these 5 important elements of a well-functioning system. All right. So if you are going to, you know, make sure that you are compliant with the financial requirements of a funding body, you want to have this system in place. Okay. So here we go. The first one, I'll start here. D is for documented, right? So everything to do with this system here, everything to do with meeting the requirements of the funding body must be written down. Now, Kay can start to give us a couple of ideas about where she would see that written down. You might have a policy and procedure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where else would you see it written down? Or in the funding and service agreement, in the contract. Right. So, Kay, anything you can think of there about documenting everything that needs to happen there. The next thing we're going to see in this well-functioning system is everything is implemented in practice, right? Meaning that everything that's written down actually happens. So if we've got a policy and procedure, that we are, you know, we're ensured that the staff are following the procedure. So if we wanted to know if all of the compliance requirements for the funder were being implemented in practice, we would see things like completed reports, and reports would be completed on time. And we would see, receipts for acquittals. We might see, what else would be completed if we were meeting all the requirements of the funding body? If there was a ledger or a register, we would see those dates updated, you know, like when was this spent and when does that have to be spent by? And,
a brokerage register or something like that.
Yeah, and we would see that it was live, you know, we would see the dates changing, things like that. We might even see in people's Outlook calendar that there were some dates for when that particular report's due. You know what I mean? And we would even see in the board minutes where they had signed off on a funding acquittal, for example. Yeah, so there's quite a lot of evidence there that would show us that this is in place. Just want to say hello to Danella. Hello, Danella.
Hi, Marie.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Very good.
Apologies. I was I've been in 2 meetings, so
Oh.
just, yeah,
Gosh, and you still made it here. That's
clever
lovely.
of you, Danella.
half an hour late, but yes.
Don't worry, you can watch the other half.
I'm relying on the recording, yes.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, you've joined us at a very good spot here. Feel free to contribute. We're looking at a system to ensure compliance with the financial requirements of the funding body, because that's one of our indicators in the financial management standard.
Yeah.
Kay's doing an awesome job of giving us some examples of the evidence that she would look for.
Yeah.
We got I probably put there under implemented in practice too, Kay, I probably would see something like a register, an actual register of your contracts, or, you know, all the contracts that you have and when those reports are due. I happen to know that Danella's organisation does a great job of this and might even have some software that they use to help to monitor this. So, you know, we would see that those sorts of tools, let's call them the tools, being used.
Yeah.
It's a lot for organisations to keep sort of, you know, in their outlook, or sort of, you know, to even for managers and CEOs to keep in their head. So we really want to see things written down, and we really want to see that they're being used, those tools are being used. Now, this part of the system here is everything is communicated. So all the things that need to happen to ensure that compliance there will be communicated to the people who need to know and understand, and it will be communicated in a way that they can understand. And the best things I've actually seen here are where, you know, the financial manager or the contract manager in an organisation will get together with the program manager and talk about the way that, you know, this needs to be expended by this date, and this is how much you've got to spend on that. Here's your budget for your program. That's what we mean by communicated. So we would say here, if you're annotating for me, Kay, we might have regular meetings with program managers. And the program managers would get a copy of their report and their budget. Do you know what I mean? It's pretty hard for a program manager to manage a program if they're not aware of their expenditure limits or what sorts of things, you know, have been designated in the budget. So sometimes we do see program managers don't get access to their budgets. They're only told when they've overspent. They sort of get a slap over the wrists. That wouldn't be a great way, would it?
I like the new add-on, if you like, for our approval max process, which is the managers can actually see their balance on their budget. So that comes up before they do their approval. So, yeah.
Right.
How much is in the pot before
exactly. So
I love that level of openness, actually. I just want to say, you know, a bit of a shout out to Tamworth Family Support Services, because they are very open in their practices like that. But some other organisations, they would be worried that the manager might think, oh, there's all this money, but in actual fact, some of that money is allocated to administration, it might be allocated to other operational costs. And so I do hear organisations kind of find it tricky to manage that. You know what I mean? Like if it appears there's money and there's not money, and they're wondering why they can't get approval for their team to go on training or whatever. So I know that's tricky, but, you know, I'm a big supporter of being open with people, especially managers who who are learning to manage their budgets, and they're non-financial people, usually managers. So all the help that they can get, the better.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, and I think it helps to ensure that everyone has the same understanding, they're on the same page, and then that's that's when I think the finance has the support of the managers in trying to ensure that things run smoothly, and vice versa. So yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, teamwork, I think they call it. It's lovely. Yeah. All right, so this is going really well. So far our system is documented. So everything that needs to happen to ensure this compliance here, it's implemented in practice. There's a very, very strong line, isn't there, between these two here? I'm just going to draw that little line. Very important that we see that connection there. Okay. So you don't want people going off and doing stuff that's not documented, and you don't want practice to, and the other way around. You know what I'm saying, don't you?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, the next one over here is delegated. All right, so this is so important that you are compliant with the financial requirements of the funding body, that you want to have every little part of everything that needs to be done delegated to someone who can do it.
Well, I
And
probably put things in the wrong spot there, but we've got job descriptions and delegations under documentation.
Yeah.
yeah, well, see, this is a great thing about job descriptions, because job descriptions not only document what should happen, they also communicate what should happen, and they also delegate what should happen. So now you see how important a job description is. So it is actually part of, a really strong part of a system, a job description. Yeah. So I would say, yes, Kay, you can put it under communicated and under delegated for sure. Because in a job description, if you've got the financial management responsibilities, particularly those around meeting compliance requirements for a funder, you want to have it in there. You want to have that clear. You also want to have the policy and procedure would also delegate who's responsible for what. So you can put the delegations there, you can put the policy and procedure there. So you start to see how important these documents are when it comes to a well-functioning system. There'll often be across a funding and service agreement, there'll possibly be particular things that the CEO needs to sign off on, or that the board needs to sign off. Sometimes that's determined in the funding and service agreement, the level at which people can sign off on things. For example, you want to, if you're using external accountant, you want to have very clearly documented in your service agreement with that external accountant their role in acquitting this funding. Like when does it have to be done and how long can they have to, because there's tight timeframes around this. For example, if they're sending off your annual financial report to ACNC, you want to have that written into the service agreement. So sometimes service agreements with accountants is another way of delegating if you are using an external people. How you going there, Kay?
Something stopped typing.
Don't worry about that. I can put that there.
That's all right. I'm on it now.
Beautiful.
So sorry, where does that auditing process sit with this?
Now, the auditing process is that part of your system to ensure compliance with funder requirements. If you've got it written into your funding and service agreement that you have to get an audited financial statement, then it would need to be documented. So it would need to be in your policy and procedure.
Yeah.
Or it would be documented in your funding and service agreement. So, Kay, we can put funding and service agreement up here under documented. Okay, funding agreement. I'm just going to put, I can do that for you. So the funding agreement sometimes says what needs to happen.
And we could put audit reports in the implemented bit, couldn't we?
Exactly. Well done. Here we go. What a great team. You probably want to have with your, if you've got an external financial, external accountant, you will have also delegated your auditor. So you'll put that there, Kay. You'll have some sort of agreement with your auditor as well.
Auditor agreement.
Yeah. Okay. So how's it look? This system's looking really great. Look, this is our imaginary system, of course, but, as if you had these sorts of things in place, then, you'd be thinking, well, we've got a great system here. But you can't know until you do this last part here. Now, this element of a well-functioning system is important and often missed. And so if any of these 5 bubbles are missed, you have a weakness in your system. Now, everybody knows, I don't even need to ask you, but a well-functioning system is periodically evaluated. Which another word for evaluated is monitored, right? So this is your system monitoring. So what we're doing is we're having a look at this system here, to see if it's working or not. Now, what sort of evidence will we have to know if our system for ensuring compliance with the funder requirements is working or not? What sorts of evidence would we have that it's working or it's not working?
So we'd have the evidence that we've been talking about, wouldn't we? We'd have auditors' reports.
You would have, yes, you would have no issues in your auditor reports. Very good.
We would have, I guess, evidence of those meetings.
Yes, yes.
We'd have satisfactory, like we'd be compliant with our funding agreements.
Yeah, so you'd be getting good feedback from your funders. Yeah. You would probably continue to get funded. That's a pretty good indicator that you've got a great system for complying.
Yeah.
Some organisations that do really well in this area, they have the funder contacting them to say, oh, we've got this funding. Would you be willing to apply for this funding? Do you know what I mean? Sort of you become like a preferred supplier, a preferred government supplier.
Preferred provider.
Yeah.
An employer of choice as well.
What a great position to be in. All right. The other thing here is I just wanted to make note of the variations. The sometimes you have an opportunity. If you're monitoring your system and your financial performance system, you would certainly see that you were if you were underspending, for example. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Management of variations. Yeah.
Management of variations. So I want to say that probably goes under implemented in practice. But it could also go under communicated, because you'd be communicating with your funder about any issues to do with underspending. So we would expect, sorry, Kay, what did you say then?
I said I can't move it once I've typed.
I can move it. Don't worry.
Oh, okay, good. But is it not also, you can't manage your over or underspend unless you're monitoring it? You can't, unless you know that you've got an over or underspend. So is it not evidence of evaluation of some kind as well?
I'm going to put it here next to communicated and implemented in practice. But yes, if you, Kay, if you wouldn't mind putting under evaluate, monitor, the evidence that you would have that your system's working well, I suppose, is that you would identify early identification of under or overspending. So that's the sort of thing that you would see if you're evaluating or monitoring your system, is that you would have early identification of any over or underspending.
So that would come, like that could easily just come in a monthly budget report.
Yeah. Yep.
Like something that shows you, the variation to plan.
Yeah.
Part of your system then, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So sometimes what we look to see, because we know that it's more the norm that there would be over or underspending, and how does an organisation manage underspending? Well, the usual process when it comes to the funder would be that you would get in touch with the funder and you'd negotiate for your contract to be varied. So we would see attachments to your deed of agreement or attachments to your funding agreement. That's an append. What do you call it? An addendum? An addendum. Yes. Yeah, or a variation to the agreement that says, yeah, you can now use that money for that, or we've now agreed that you can, carry this funding over to the next financial year, as an example. So management of variations under and overspending, and certainly having a system to be able to identify that early. Yeah, that's what we're looking for. So here we go. Now, when you are monitoring your system for financial management, you have an opportunity to identify issues early. And what do we do with those issues now? Where are we taking any issues that we identify with our system? We might see we have a weakness here in our documentation. We might see, hang on, we've documented that not everybody's doing it. So we might see we've got a weakness with implementation. We might see, I don't think we're communicating that clearly because that's something that's not done 100% of the time, or that's something we haven't been able to complete on time the last couple of quarters, for example. So when you're looking at your data, maybe you had 2 acquittals and one of your acquittals was late getting away, and you might see where was the weakness in the system that meant that happened. And you'll go and you'll strengthen that part of your system. And that process is called, that process of monitoring your systems and looking for improvements is called, shall we have another circle over here somewhere? And we might make it another colour.
Running out of space.
It's all right. It's okay. It's called, everybody knows,
CQI.
all right. So I'm going to make a little line from there to there. And I want to say that anything that you identify here when you are monitoring your system that you identify could be improved becomes a continuous quality improvement project. So continuous quality improvement by definition is making improvements, incremental improvements to our systems. All right, so if you have an issue with compliance with the financial requirements of the funding body, you can go and, you know, locate your bookkeeper and tell them off, or you can go and have a look at your system and identify where there's a weakness when you've got this kind of a view. So remember, systems are diced, D-I-C-E-D, documented, implemented, communicated, evaluated, delegated. And it doesn't matter what we're looking at. Today, we're looking at a system for compliance with funder requirements, but we could easily be looking at a system for payroll or infection control, and we would have the same letters. We would do the same analysis. I'm
Marie,
going to share.
I've got a question.
I'm just going to save that so that I can put it into the list of resources that we pop up on the website. So you've got our beautiful brainstorm. Go for it, Kay. I might just tidy it up a bit before I save it. Sorry, go for it.
No, it looks like a working document. I like those.
No, I was just going to do this.
I was just going to ask for our smaller clients where, you know, there's one person often pedaling really hard to get a whole lot of this stuff done. Just in terms of an assessment, you know, if they're weak on something, is that going to be a gap? Is that going to be an essential requirement in their assessment process?
If it's a risk. So what I would say is this system to ensure compliance with funder requirements for any organisation, if they don't have a good system around this, it is a risk, regardless of their size. But when we're doing a system analysis here in a small organisation, then, you know, we'd basically be saying, well, you know, do you have a policy and procedure, and do you have some sort of a register? And the people who complete the reports for the funder, do they know what they're doing? And, you know, do they know it's their job? You know, like, have you got delegations that sort of say this is who it is that signs off on the reports to the funder? That sort of thing. So we just, it's, what's that word? It's contextualised for a smaller organisation, but sufficiently that it helps them to manage risk.
Yeah.
Because for any organisation that I've ever worked with, Kay and Danelli are probably the same, loss of funding is one of the biggest risks, apart from, you know, injury, serious injury or death of a client. Loss of funding is going to be a door closing event, so it's got to be managed very, very carefully. So as long as, look, I've actually worked with organisations that where the manager, let's just say they're a volunteer coordinator, they might just have their one funding contract and they've looked at it and they've said, look, here's all the must-dos, and they've put the significant dates in their Outlook calendar.
Mm.
And that would be sufficient.
Yeah, when one person's managing it, there's not that risk of, like, the risk increases with the more people that are handling it, right? So that communication becomes really important.
Exactly.
If there's only one person doing it, then communication risk is really low. Yeah.
Exactly. But it's always a board accountability. It's always a board responsibility, because generally it's the board that's signing off on that contract with the funding body.
Mm-hmm.
And so the board are the ones that have to make sure that these systems are in place and effective.
Yeah.
You can't delegate that responsibility away to the CEO or the manager. You have to take that. So the board's the one that has to make sure that these systems are in place. So if you're a board member watching, together and systemize your financial compliance with the funder requirements. It's a fun activity, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, that's what we wanted to chat with you about today. Hopefully what we've given you is a bit of an insight into those 4 indicators under the financial management standard, the sorts of evidence we'd be looking for, and a way for you to do a system analysis to be able to sort of check yourself before we come in and check you. So, you know, if that's what you've taken from this 1 hour, I'm so very happy. If you've just enjoyed spending time with Danella Kay and I'm also very
That's a bonus too.
So the resources that we're putting into the portal, which you will be able to locate through our website, are the ACNC compliance checklist. And there's a couple of links to the Associations Act, New South Wales, and any South Australian viewers watching, and to ACNC financial requirements. And we're also putting in there what was it? Oh, it was the sample financial report for an association, which is very detailed. You won't need all of it, but you might be interested to know what a detailed report would look like for your board.
Okay.
Let's go. See you again on the wire. You, Danella.
Thank you very much.
Marie.
Thank you.
Nice to hear your voice